So, when I was younger, I remember in my generation, the girls used to get irritated and annoyed when an auntie would start asking you how old you were, and what your plans were, and if you were looking for marriage. But as time went by, I realized that it would be worse if nobody cared, if the aunties weren't asking and weren't looking out for us. And so the fact that somebody is actually taking an interest in you and asking you details about what you're looking for and what your hopes and dreams are is a good sign, because it's a sign that they see something worthy in you and they want to help you find a good partner. So a lot of organizations that come together to try and help this process for men and women in our community. So today's talk, there's just so much you can cover when it comes to trying to find a righteous spouse. And when we narrowed it down, what the organizers said was they wanted us to try and give guidelines to people who are on this journey of trying to find a partner about what exactly people should be looking for and how to narrow down those choices. And of course, this is a difficult topic because everybody is different. And not every single person is looking for the same thing. And so how do we go about it? So I think one of the best ways to start is actually to talk about what not to do and what traps not to fall into. And this decision that inshallah all of you are going to be making, and I hope everybody left their home today, this morning, with making an intention, calling on Allah, doing dua, because first and foremost, you call on your Lord and Creator, because inshallah, He has created a partner for you out there somewhere. You just have no idea where, and we all need to call on Allah to facilitate making those meetings happen in an easy way. So it starts with intentionality and dua. Right? And so this decision on who you're going to marry, inshallah, is going to be probably the biggest decision you're going to make in your life, because it is going to change the course of your life moving forward. It's going to affect your dunya, it's going to affect your akhirah, it's going to affect your relationship with yourself, it's going to affect your relationship with your family, with your parents, your siblings, your friends. And so a lot of thought needs to be put into it. It needs to be treated with seriousness and gravity and respect, right? So one of the top things that I have always told young people is to keep in mind that when somebody does suggest someone for you, or if somebody is interested in you, even if you don't see a match and you don't see a connection, and there might even be a little voice in your head going, what were they thinking, right? How did they think that this person was right for me? Or how did this person think that I would even consider him or her? You do need to take a moment and remember to enter this process with humility, because the fact that somebody saw something in you that made them take that risk, that made them put that question out there, is something to be grateful for, even if you don't see a connection, right? And so how we talk about people who are approaching us, and how we talk about families who are considering us, and people of the opposite gender who are interested in us, there is such a thing as karma, right? If you speak about people respectfully, and if you remember that everyone is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everybody is someone's son or daughter who is beloved, inshallah, even if it's not a match for you in that moment, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see your humility and will see your respect and the honor with which you treat other fellow human beings, and inshallah will bring you to a partner. Okay, so what not to be falling for. So the conversation today is about choosing with clarity, not just chemistry. And so it's important going into this that we kind of define our terms. And so what is chemistry? Chemistry is what everybody's looking for. And the second they don't feel it or they don't see the potential for chemistry being there, a lot of people check out and they walk away. And they walk away prematurely. And there's different words for chemistries. Back in my time, people used to say click. I can feel a click, right? Nothing clicked. Some people say I just wasn't feeling it. But the truth is, what people are looking for is they're looking for what Hollywood and Bollywood and Mollywood has sold us, right? They're looking for the butterflies in the tummy. They're looking for the fireworks in the air. They're looking for the lightning bolt to go through them when they see the other person. And if they're not feeling that, if they're not falling in love immediately, head over heels, they think, well, there's really nothing here, and I don't see how we're going to build anything from this point. And what the word for that kind of chemistry that many people are looking for, actually the word is infatuation. And there is a difference between infatuation and love. And I want to go through what infatuation is. Let me just get the remote. So that people are clear about if they're feeling this right now, they can try and identify it and recognize that, oh, is this infatuation or is this what I'm looking for? So infatuation is the chemical connection that you feel with someone. It's sudden and it catches you off guard, right? It's you don't have an appetite, you can't sleep at night, you find yourself making foolish choices, you're unable to think rationally, and it's not based on anything real. It's filled with illusion. And it's powerful because it touches on a very deep human need, and that is the need for connection. And so there's a couple of things that cause infatuation to be so addictive. So it's addictive because, number one, it's effortless. All right, there's many theories for the reasons of attraction. It might be that you desire the person. It might be that the person enhances your self-esteem, your self-image. Like, I want to be with this person because of how it's going to make me look. There may be some unfinished business from your childhood that you haven't dealt with, which correlates to the personality of the person that you're infatuated with. It's hard to walk away when you are infatuated. And it often happens with a person that your parents wouldn't like, right? And that's something that should be explored, why you may be falling for somebody that nobody in your family would necessarily approve of. The second thing that infatuation, the second quality of infatuation, is that it's image-oriented. You're caught up in who you think the person is or who you think you want him or her to be. And the spell gets broken once you start to learn a little bit more about the person. The other thing about infatuation is that it's temporary, it's short-lived. And some social scientists say that on average it lasts between 18 months and 3 years. And if you notice, divorce generally happens in the first 3 to 4 years of marriage. The longer a marriage goes on, the lower the rates of divorce are. If divorce is going to happen, it usually happens in the first few years of marriage once infatuation has worn off. It's controlled. Number 4 is that it's controlled by imagination. It's controlled by imagination, so you have obsessive daydreams and fantasies. It feels really good. You don't control your imagination controls you. And the theme of many songs in popular culture you think you're listening to songs about love, but they're actually dealing with infatuation. Like Beyonce's song, Crazy in Love, Kelly Clarkson's song, Addicted, Maroon 5's song, Infatuation. So all these songs have the same themes. They talk about feeling and acting like a fool, spinning out of control with your fantasies and thoughts, the feeling of not being me as if you're possessed, the inability to see the object of your infatuation or who he or she actually is, and the realization that in order to grow, you have to give up the object of your infatuation. So love, which is different from infatuation, is rooted in knowing rather than imagining, right? You are the one who's in control. The fifth thing is infatuation is selfish. It's all about how you make me feel. It's self-centered. It's about your nafs, about your ego. And there is some giving in it, but even the giving that you do is self-serving. It's all about like, what am I going to get out of this situation, out of this relationship? And there's a saying that love is about spelling us with a capital U being Y-O-U. I think that's what makes up us. Looking at the other person and caring about them. And when infatuated, you see yourself through the other person's eyes. It creates this really strange sense of dependence and insecurity. And the sixth thing about infatuation is that it promotes insecurity. You're thrilled, but you're not actually happy. There isn't a sense of peace. You're constantly worrying that the spell's going to wear off and the other person's going to lose interest in you. So the truth is you do need a certain amount of infatuation for the spark of the relationship, right? To start things off. But it can't be the foundation of the relationship. So if you want percentages, if the relationship is based on 80 to 100% infatuation, the chances are very slim that the relationship is going to actually develop into a real connection. But if infatuation is only 10 to 30%, then there is a tremendous potential for a true connection. And when infatuation isn't kept in check, then people end up not seeing the bigger picture and they end up making unwise choices. Okay, and like I said in the beginning, it's important to discuss infatuation, and that's why I want to begin today's talk, because many people reject perfectly good candidates only because they're not feeling infatuated, or they don't see themselves as ever being infatuated. All right, so I want to go through the 10 questions. I'm going to recommend a book, but the presentation I'm doing today is based on this book. It's a book written by Shana Levitan. She's a conservative Jewish woman, and many of the things she teaches in this book are in line with our deen and what our religion and what our Islamic culture teaches us. And this book, touching on what the brother said earlier, I only want to get married once. I only want to get married once. And it's the 10 essential questions for getting it right the first time. And so I'm going to go through these questions, and I want to give credit where credit's due. It's from this book, Shana Levitan. The first question is, do you share the same basic goals? If your values are on 2 different pages, the odds of your marriage working decrease significantly. So values are our bedrock ideals. They are our convictions regarding what we believe is right or wrong, good or bad, important or desirable. And values express our highest priorities. There are intrinsic truths. And people fight and die for their values, right? Value conflict is one of the most destructive elements in a relationship. And Dr. Judith Wallerstein, she wrote a book called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. And it's a very, very well-researched book that I recommend, even for people looking at relationships. I recommend this book, The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. And she said many people divorce because they have come to abhor the values and lifestyle of their partner. That's usually the thing that tips people for the most part towards divorces. The values are just no longer aligned. And when people are attracted to one another, they're blinded. So I can give you an example of a couple that I know about, where the wife was literally, people used to call her the life of the party. The guy and girl met each other in college, fell in love, got married, and they were one of the most popular couples in the community. A good-looking couple, told the best stories, made everybody laugh, were invited to everything. And what happened was, one day the wife asked me to come over, and I wasn't actually close to her, but she asked me to come over and give her some advice. And she told me that she and her husband were actually on the brink of divorce. And which really came as a shock to me, because to all of us, they were like the movie star couple. Nobody saw it coming. They had the most elaborate wedding, and everything about them seemed ideal. But what was interesting is when I went to her house, when it was my first time over there, and I actually asked her, "Oh, are you getting ready to move?" Like, I thought she was getting ready to move, because there were boxes everywhere, and there was clothing lying out, and there was racks of clothing out in the living room, and it looked like somebody was in a state of moving homes. And she was like, "Oh, no, I'm not moving." And then she had me sit down. And basically what it came down to is that her husband wanted to divorce her because he felt that he was not a priority in the marriage, and that their children were not a priority, and that the home was not a priority. And she said, she told me that she said to him, "What are you talking about? Everybody loves us. Everywhere we go, like, you know, we're so adored, and I adore you, you adore me. How could you possibly, want to end this marriage?" But basically what it came down to is that their values were no longer aligned, because originally the guy was into her because she was beautiful, she was the life of the party, she was a lot of fun. However, she was not a homemaker, and the home was not a priority. And what I saw, the state of her home, that looked like somebody was in the process of moving, was the way her home looked all the time. And the husband was done. And one of the things she told me he said to her was, "If I wanted a clean undershirt, I know you could not find one for me." And her response was, "What does that mean about being a wife? Even a maid could find you a clean undershirt." And I realized what he was trying to say was that he didn't feel that he had value in her eyes, right? That she didn't care about him. But all the blame doesn't lie with her. That was not something he looked at. He didn't look at, when he was considering her for marriage, about how selfless she was, how much she gave to other people. She did feel she was giving to other people, but her way of giving to other people was having great conversations and being the life of the party and showing up when she was invited, right? So there was a problem with their values not being aligned. So people commonly fall into these 4 traps, and I want to go through these 4 traps so that you can keep them in mind for yourself. One is they don't know their own values. They don't realize what's important to them. The second is, by the time they start talking about values, they're already too emotionally involved, and they're caught up in the moment. The third is, they're consciously avoiding thinking about the value conflict that they're realizing is there, because they don't want to lose the chemistry, right? They don't want to rock the boat. And the fourth trap is that they recognize the differences in values, but they naively believe love conquers all, or I can change him, I can change her, she'll change, he'll change, right? Going into it with that attitude. So these are the 4 traps. So on December 17, 2006, the New York Times came out with an article, and this article, some of you may have read it, it's very, very popular. It's called "Questions Couples Should Ask or Wish They Had Before Marrying." Many young couples, while they're talking, go through this article. And of the 15 questions listed in that article, almost all of them are values and goal-oriented. So the main topics of the questions that were covered is 1, about bringing up children, 2, financial obligations and goals, including spending and saving money, 3, how the household is going to be run, 4, spiritual beliefs and needs, 5, how much religious and moral education for the children, 6, boundaries with in-laws, 7, where to live, and 8, commitment to the marriage bond. These were the topics that were covered in those important questions that people wish they had covered. Most people, they're looking to see, do we have the same likes? Do we have the same interests? And I know of a couple that broke up after almost 2 years of talking. And at the end, the lady said, wife said, I realized at the end of it, the only thing we had in common was that we like Chinese food. So, interests are different from values and goals. You can have the same interests, but if your values and goals aren't aligned, it's not going to be a match. So what you want to do is you want to pick out your 5 top essential values. The things that are most important to you to have in yourself and in your partner. And I'll give you an example about a young couple where the guy told me that there were only 3 things that he was looking for in a girl. And he said he was surprised at how difficult it was to find those 3 things. And the only women he was talking to were religious women, practicing women, women who pray 5 times a day, women who covered, wore the hijab, were not confused about their meaning. But he had 3 values that he decided were important to him, and every girl he talked to, he covered those, and girl after girl after girl just, didn't make the honest list until he finally met the woman who did. And he told me, and these may not be your values, so this isn't up for debate, I'm just sharing with you what his values were. So an important value to him was that he didn't want his wife, his future wife, to be somebody who was plastered all over social media. He didn't want somebody who was trying to be an influencer. He didn't want somebody who was posting lots of pictures and reels and videos about herself and her personal life. The second value that was important to him was he didn't want, and he was at UC Berkeley, and so he said at UC Berkeley he found this was very difficult for him to find. He didn't want to practice with Muslim women. He didn't want somebody who was confused about Islam's stance on LGBTQIA issues. So even if a woman didn't think she was gay, didn't say she was gay, if she said, I don't see anything wrong with it, I think it's fine to be gay, that was somebody that he knew didn't share the same values as him. And he said that it was important to him because whoever he marries is going to raise his children, and he didn't want the next generation to be confused about what the dean teaches on this topic. And the third value that was important to him was what he called toxic feminism. So he had no problem with if his wife wanted to work and earn her own money, and was highly educated, and he believes that men and women deserve mutual respect and should be treated equally. But what he defined, I asked him to explain to me what toxic feminism was for him, and he said it's when women think that they're fine without men, and that men are trash, and that men are the major reasons for all the problems of the world, and that they just in general talk negatively about men. And it took him a while, and he eventually did find somebody who shared those values with him. So, along with everything else that was important to him, that I'm sure many people here share as well. So here are the questions you want to ask yourself to help you define your own values. 1, what are the 3 most important values you want to give your children? 2, you want to list the top 5 areas into which you invest your time and energy, and then ask yourself why. So what are the top 5 areas you invest your time and energy, and then ask yourself why. Is it at the gym? Is it at the mosque? Is it with your startup? Ask yourself, where are you investing most of your time and energy? 3, what are the 3 most important character traits everyone should develop? What do you think are the 3 most important character traits that everyone should have? That other couple that I told you about, the movie star couple that unfortunately did end up divorcing, the husband, the ex-husband, was on the apps, and somebody I knew was considering him, and she told me that the number 1, she didn't know that I had tried to counsel a couple years ago, but she said that on the apps, he said, the number 1 thing he said, I'm looking for someone who's not materialistic. Which was interesting because that was the way he could have described his first wife, so he definitely learned what he did wrong. So look at the 3 most important character traits that you feel everyone should develop. 4, name 3 role models that you have. 3 role models. And then ask yourself, what do you admire about them? What is it that you like about those role models? And then 5, If you got $10 million tomorrow for donation, you could only give the money away in donation, what causes would you choose to give that $10 million away to? 6, what are 4 things you want remembered about you after you die? So if God forbid you pass away tomorrow, what are 4 things that you hope people will remember about you? 7, list 4 values without which a part of you would die. If you didn't have these 4 values, a part of you would die. And then 8, name 3 of the most memorable experiences in your life. And then ask yourself what values came up with those 3 experiences. So ask yourself the 3 most memorable experiences, and then ask yourself what values came up. Okay, if I had been able to draw this for my slideshow, I would have, but I'm just going to ask you to imagine it. I want you to imagine a bullseye, okay? So in the center, we've got values. On the outside ring, we have goals. And then outside of goals, we have interests, okay? So we've got values in the middle, we've got goals right outside of that, and then we've got interests outside of goals. So values are the foundations upon which your goals and dreams are built. Values are more essential than goals, and then goals are more essential than interests. So, for example, you and your partner, they both love going cafe hopping, right? You might love coffee, you might be passionate about coffee, and you have this shared interest in going to cafes all over the world. And then your goal may eventually be, I want to open up a cafe with my husband or my wife. Together, we're going to open up a cafe. But then if your values are outlined, if one of you is willing to take an interest-bearing loan, one of you is willing to lie, cheat, and steal in order to get, the permits and the licensing, and the other one is like, no, one is saying, I'm fine with serving non-Sabina meat, and the other is like, no, all our meat needs to be halal. That's showing that the values are different, right? Even though the interests and the goals are the same, and that's where problems are going to start to come up. And people often make the mistake of thinking that if they have a few common interests and a couple of common goals, then that's enough. And I want to give an example of another couple that I actually introduced to each other and learned a lot through the process. So the guy had been looking for a girl for a really long time, and one of the people who'd been helping him told me one thing she noticed about him is that he is very quick to make up his mind. He doesn't like dilly-dally. And she said, for the most part, he would just say no with every suggestion that was made to him. And the way, this was a fellow auntie, the way this auntie knew this young man is they did refugee work together. And she was really impressed with his character and willing to help him. And this is the criteria, this is what this guy had. He had an Ivy League education. He was decent looking. It was in a very good career. He came from a good family. He was religious. He was well respected. It turned out one of my sons actually knew him from university and spoke highly of him. All these great qualities, right? And I introduced him to a girl who, highly educated, attractive, religious, great personality, funny, hardworking. And he immediately, when he saw her biodata and saw her picture, he told the other auntie, I think she's the one. And they both started talking. And they really hit it off. She really respected him. He really admired her. And it was, going forward, alhamdulillah, she was really smart about not becoming infatuated with everything, that's on the surface. Same with him. Everything came to a screeching halt. Why? And she called me crying because she wasn't sure if this should be a deal breaker or not. And she was really, really struggling. And what came up is he has 2 best friends who are women. And he talks to them every week. And he talks to them for an hour at a time. And he goes to them for their opinions about pretty much everything in his life. And he made it clear to this girl that these 2 women are very important to me and they're my best friends. And I expect you to be okay with that. The girl came from a very conservative family where men and women didn't parents like that. And socially, that was like unheard of for her. The idea that a guy would have a girl as a best friend who he would talk to for hours and consult. She couldn't wrap her brain and mind around it. And she presented the case to him that, well, what, because they lived in another state. She said, well, what if when I come home to visit my family, I tell you I'm going out to dinner with this guy that I knew in college or in high school, and he and I are going out for dinner, and we're going to talk for hours. And he said to her, well, I would trust you. But this girl believes, something I actually believe as well, that men and women can't just be friends. That it's a recipe for trouble. Right? There's other things about it as well too. And then a man and a woman are alone together, the third one with shit on. I've seen it happen again and again and again, where people think they're safe, they're just friends, and if nothing else, emotional affairs begin. So the whole thing broke up over that because he wasn't willing to bend. She was willing to get to know the girls, but she wasn't okay with him having one-on-one conversations with them alone. Once he was with her, having his own private friendship with them, where they knew his issues, he knew their issues. And it was a bit of a struggle. There wasn't a clear-cut answer. But what it came down to was their values were not aligned. Even though they had the same interests, they had the same kind of education and life data and families and everything, but the values were not a match. And it was unfortunate. I shouldn't say unfortunate. As you can tell, I was disappointed that it didn't work out, but it's all from love. I don't want to use the word unfortunate. Allah's subhanahu writes who we're going to marry, and it's part of our risk, and it was a learning opportunity, I think, for everyone. One thing I did respect about him is he told the other auntie, because he didn't know that I was being told everything that he said to the other auntie, and he told the other auntie that it ended because there was something about me that I wasn't willing to change, that she needed me to change. So I respected that, and he did about her being, inflexible or wrong or too conservative or, he owned it. He owned it, that he wasn't willing to give up that value that was important to him. So the discussion about values and goals, you guys, it needs to take place sooner rather than later. Right? Okay, so that's the first question. The second is, are you relating to the person or are you relating to an person, who the person is underneath? So image is the way a person looks, the way they dress, their profession, their financial status, who he or she knows, their reputation, maybe in the community, what they're famous for, what they're known for. It could even be who that person reminds you of. Maybe they remind you of somebody that you liked once upon a time. So infatuation thrives on image, while love thrives on knowledge. And people eventually get bored with external things, and a relationship yearns for something much deeper. And sometimes a person turns out to be the antithesis of what he or she appeared to be. I've seen that happen again and again, and I'm sure all of you have as well. Basically, attraction is important. You do want to be attracted to the person you're considering for marriage, but it's not enough to sustain a relationship. And somebody once asked me, what's the criteria? If, I don't think somebody is drop dead beautiful or gorgeous, like, how do I know whether I should move forward or not? And I told the person, the criteria honestly says, you just shouldn't be repulsed. You shouldn't be repulsed. If you find somebody, and I know maybe subjective, and everybody has their own taste, but if you find somebody painful to look at, then that's something you have to figure out for yourself, right? But other than that, everyone should be given a chance. They say when it comes to men's hairstyles, there's 3 hairstyles: parted, unparted, and departed. And for women, it's pretty much, all women, most women, not all, but most women end up looking like their mothers. So, over time, we all change. And It's true, it's a cliche, but looks do fade. And so we're going to be looking at something a lot deeper. And so I want to talk about something that one of the sociologists coined called the bulldozer phenomenon. And it's something that a lot of women are the victim of. And the idea is that I can change it, right? I'm just going to go in, like, I like all this stuff I don't like, and so I'm going to change the person and make them the way I want to be. And men have been guilty of this as well. I know a guy who married a girl who over time, I mean, she has had all kind of work done on her. And I found out recently that it was her husband. You know, they got married and he had a whole idea of how he wanted her to look, and she was fine with it. She went along with it. It worked for them, right? But so the bulldozer phenomenon is that you think that you're going to go in and you're going to completely overhaul your partner, and that's a problem. You have to be generally okay with how your partner looks. You know, there's little tweaks that can be made here and there, fashion and sense of style, and maybe somebody can get braces eventually, or you know, lose a couple of pounds if they need to, but it has to be their decision, not yours. So you want to avoid being a bulldozer. And bulldozers don't care about other people. They only are fixated on their own agendas. So you want to look out for that. If you're talking to somebody who immediately starts making suggestions about what you should change about yourself, that's a red flag. And women in general are known for improving things, right? They're known for like tweaking things, making things better. That's why men want women in their lives, right? That's why you see a guy's apartment has a completely different look once he gets married, mashallah. And that's a good thing. That's a beautiful thing. And it's something to be honored. But there's a difference between doing a general like improvement and doing a complete overhaul. Trying to do a complete overhaul. Okay, I want to touch a little bit on long distance relationships when it comes to relating to whether you're relating to a person or to their image. No matter how great your connection appears to be, you have to spend some quality time with the person that you're considering, ideally in the same town. So it's important to make time to, you know, get to know each other in the same vicinity. And FaceTime is better for maintaining a relationship that's already formed, but spending quality time in the same town is very, very important. Okay, the third question. Can you admit that your potential partner has faults? Are you realistic about your own faults? This is probably the thing that makes most aunties who are trying to help with matchmaking scream, is how unrealistic people are about what's in their mirrors, right? They're only looking at others with a microscope and a magnifying glass, but they're not seeing the reality in the mirror. So typically there's 3 reasons for convincing yourself that the object of your affection is perfect. The first is that you just met the person and you don't know his or her faults. The second is that you ignore his or her faults or you're in denial of them. And the third is that you admit his or her faults, but the infatuation is so strong that you just brush them aside. And studies have shown that when a person is experiencing infatuation, a substance called, forgive me, I probably didn't butcher this pronunciation, a substance called phenylethylamine, PEA, is released into his or her system. PEA has the potential to bring on feelings of elation, bliss, and euphoria. It's a natural amphetamine, and it explains why infatuated people usually don't feel a lot of sleep. Now, a person who's infatuated is literally intoxicated. So infatuation, you guys, is effortless. Love takes work, and it requires effort. So infatuation effortlessly ignores or plays down someone's faults. But love consciously accepts those faults with effort, but chooses to focus on the positive with effort. It takes conscious effort. And so when you ignore your inner voice about what you're feeling or what you're sensing that might be bothering you, you're going to make a mess of things. So here's where you want to rely on istikhara. Istikhara is so important, and it always surprises me how many people don't know about it and don't utilize it. Once you, and I encourage everybody today to be sure to read the translation of the dua for istikhara. It's a beautiful dua. And I know people who do istikhara for, like, what refrigerator they're going to buy, right? They do istikhara for everything. Because it literally is telling Allah, asking Allah, that Allah, if this is not good for me in the dunya, and it's not good for me in the akhirah, it's not good for my religion, then move me away from it and move it away from me. And make me okay with it. Because many of us get our hearts broken, right? When things don't work out. Like even the way I talked about that couple, I said it was unfortunate. It's like you start getting emotionally invested. But with istikhara, you're leaving it to Allah. You're doing your work, you're putting in your effort, but you're asking Allah to guide you towards that which is going to be most pleasing to Him and is going to be most beneficial for you. And it's very simple. You do niyam for 2 rakats of istikhara. You pray 2 rakats, and then you just read the Arabic dua and read the dua in English, the translation, and talk to Allah. And then leave it to Him. Do your part, but then be fine with the outcome that He decides for you. So the question is, are you realistic about yourself? And are you looking for someone who is out of your league? Or are you underestimating yourself, right? Could you do better? So it goes both ways. And people who fail to see clearly usually fall into 3 traps. The first is infatuation, and the lie is, all I need is attraction. That's it. I just want to be in love, and I want to think that the other person is drop dead gorgeous. That's what I need. The second is desperation. And the lie there is, I don't need or deserve anything. Or, there's no one else out there. There's no one out there for me. So I'll just take what I can get. Right? And the third, which is the trap that keeps people single for the longest time. Most people who are single for a long time have fallen into this trap. The third trap is not living in reality. The first lie is thinking he's perfect or she's perfect. And the second lie is thinking I'm perfect. I have way too much to offer, and anybody who gets me is going to be so lucky. So in order to avoid these 3 traps, infatuation, desperation, and not living in reality, you need to do the following. You want to create a detailed list of the character traits you're looking for in a potential mate. So everybody should be making a detailed list of what they are looking for. So I'll give you an example of one list somebody made. Kind, hardworking, family-oriented, friendly, funny, spiritual, health-oriented, strong, creative, growth-oriented, financially savvy, efficient. This was a list that somebody came up with, right? Now, you're going to take your list of character traits, and then you are going to pick out the 3 most important things that you need in the other person. So I gave you that example of the young man who said, I don't want my wife all over social media, I don't want her to be confused about LGBTQIA issues, and I don't want her to think that men are trash, right? Along with some other qualities that are important to him. But the 3 most important, and these 3 that you pick out, these are your needs. These are the 3 that you are not going to compromise on, no matter what. So, like for that young woman, it was a need of hers that her husband, whoever she marries, does not have private female friendships, right? That don't include her. And if the potential person that you're speaking to doesn't have one of these 3 character traits, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time, right? So it's going to be very important to figure this out. Now the rest of the list, those are your wants. It'd be nice to get them, but you could overlook some of them as long as your needs are met. And in the process, you guys, you're going to get other things you didn't even know you wanted. You're going to find other qualities, inshallah. And it's highly recommended that you go over this list with somebody you trust and respect. A mentor, a therapist, an elder, a scholar, right? Somebody who can guide you on whether you're being realistic with your list or not. Now, in a loving relationship, one with serious marriage potential, the following happens. Two people meet, they like each other, they share certain goals and values. There's attraction, but they spend time getting to know each other, going beyond the image. As they talk and spend time together, some of their faults become more apparent. They don't ignore or deny these faults. They responsibly consider whether they can handle them. They build the foundation of their marriage on shared values, honesty, respect, knowledge, and yes, attraction, instead of building a relationship on wishful thinking, blind attraction, and a false sense of security. So the relationship is built on an assessment, an understanding, and a mature acceptance of their spouse's imperfections, not a denial. Now, anyone happily married is going to admit that these imperfections become more annoying at times. But they're pleasantly and consciously ignored and glanced over as each spouse focuses on the other positive and wonderful aspects of the other. And there's a term for this in our theme that everyone needs to bring into their lives, and it's called husnadam. Husnadam. It means having a beautiful opinion of one another. It means making 70 excuses. It means, yes, this thing is so annoying about my partner, but there's these 3 other qualities that I really respect and admire. So, and I know perfection is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only for the prophets. So I'm going to give him a pass, or I'm going to give her a pass, right? There will always be something lacking. And too many people are looking for perfection. They don't want anything to annoy them or bother them. Okay, so acting from a place of love, you're going to make responsible decisions, and acting from a place of infatuation, you're going to make reckless decisions. So, it is absolutely imperative that you ask yourself the following questions. Can I admit the faults of the person I'm considering? And obviously this is after you spend some time getting to know them. 2, can I handle those faults? 3, can I admit my own faults? Am I aware of my own imperfections? 4, am I realistic as to the type of man or woman that I should marry? Am I being realistic? 5, am I allowing my fantasies, my immature needs to take over and push me to ignore negative or destructive aspects about the man or woman whom I'm considering? So if your answers to any of these questions reveal a problem area in your relationship, it's essential to speak to somebody that you trust for advice. And I'll give you an example from my own life, and alhamdulillah, I have permission to share this story, but when I was getting to know my husband, and I was in Southern California, he was in Northern California, he used to come down every 2 weeks, he once lost his temper in public with me. And he lost his temper in front of my mother, in front of my siblings, and it wasn't pretty. And I had to really think about this, like what this meant, like for the future. And we had to talk about it. And I told him, look, I have grown up seeing uncles snap at their wives in front of people, and the aunties take it. But I know I can't be that person. And I said, I know you may need the type of wife who can handle that when you're under stress, when you're under pressure, you kind of let out your anger on her. Because what had happened was we had gotten lost. We were on the freeway, he was driving, he had been given our car to drive, the van. The van was full of people. and we're on the freeway. He's new to Southern California. He doesn't know his way around. This is before GPS and cell phones. And we were going to UCLA to visit my brother. And there was a point where we had to decide, do we go on this freeway or do we go on that freeway? So at some point, he's like, okay, guys, which freeway do I take? And everybody in the van went, I don't know. Like, we all went, I don't know. My mom was like, I thought I knew the way. I was like, I've never driven to UCLA. Somebody else was like, oh, I've only taken the bus. Like, nobody knew how to guide him. And he lost it. He was just like, everybody just thinks I'm in charge and puts me up the driver's wheel and nobody even knows where we're going. And he just went off. It was very, very embarrassing to witness. And so when he and I talked, I was like, you know, you may be the type of wife who can handle that when you visit with her, but I can't be that person because I know I really care about Islam. I really care about making other people uncomfortable. Like this was a very strong value of mine. And I'll never forget what he said because we actually thought of breaking up over this because he did have a good temper at that time. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, I can't promise you that I'm not going to make mistakes, but what I can promise is that inshallah I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. And a few weeks later, the same scenario happened. He got lost and nobody knew where to go, and he happened to be the one driving. And I remember just sitting there so tense, thinking he's going to lose it again. Alhamdulillah, he didn't. And he has kept his word. He does, you know, his blood pressure does go up quickly over certain things, but he's kept it cool in public. So that was, you know, a very important discussion that had to happen. And it was a little bit of a risk because, you know, what does it mean if somebody who's during the time when they're supposed to be on their best behavior and they're losing their temper, what does that say about them, right? I did do shura with people. I got advice from people who knew me and knew him and vouched for him and said, oh, he's a good guy, give him another chance. Okay, the fourth question. Does your relationship have healthy boundaries? So ask yourself if any of these situations apply to you. I change my opinion based on my companions. Why do I keep going back to somebody who I know isn't good for me? Why can't I have a normal relationship? I feel like I'm a magnet for abusive partners. Okay? Ask yourself if any of those apply to you. So, one of the misconceptions about marriage is that it's about two people becoming one. It's not about forgetting who you are or becoming a completely different person because that's what the other person wants from you. And it's impossible to experience true closeness and oneness in a relationship unless both parties have a healthy sense of self-esteem. So it's important to know who you are and what's important to you. And a person loses themselves when they lack boundaries. Now, so what's a boundary, right? Boundary is a word that gets misused a lot these days, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm using the word boundary as something to like keep people out, right? Or to be rude to anybody or to break off relationships. A boundary basically is like a border. And a border defines and it contains and it protects. And your borders give you a sense of your own uniqueness, right? Like who you are. You have your own identity. And there's a joke, some people say, a marriage consists of two people who become one. The only problem is deciding which one. But that's not how it should be. A healthy marriage is enriched by people's differences. It's not threatened by them. So in order to merge together, you have to know who you are. And you have to have a sense of self-concept, which means that you need to know what you believe in and what you stand for. Otherwise, you're not going to have anything to give to the other person. So in order to assess your self-concept, ask yourself the following questions. 1, how well do I know myself? Am I aware of my opinions? Have I thought out and developed my opinions? 2, do I change my opinions in order to please other people? If so, are there certain types of people that I do this with more? How would I describe this type of person? 3, what would I say is distinctly me? Who are the people in my life that appreciate this distinct me? And 4, what are my values? What are my cares and concerns? So answering and thinking about these questions will help you define your self-concept and develop your boundaries, and nobody can do this work for you. This is all on you to figure out who you are. And yes, people say, but marriage is about compromise. Yes, it is. Marriage is about compromise. But the purpose of compromise is to achieve a higher goal that both people believe in. Compromise cannot mean losing yourself or compromising your own values and your emotional health. Okay. I know somebody who now, after 38 years of marriage, is considering divorce. And it's because she realized she completely lost her sense of self in the marriage. Her husband, very successful business tycoon, did very well and wanted his wife to be a certain way. And she just kind of went along, becoming what he wanted. And one of the things that was important to him, for his own reasons, was not teaching the children religion, right? And not being religious. And having this like high-flying lifestyle. And she kept going along, and now she's seen the damage it's done in her life, the damage it's done in her children's lives, not having a sense of self, of who they are, what it means to be Muslim. And she regrets it. She regrets having given up her own values that she had been raised with, and not knowing who she was when she married. The next one, number 5. What do people you are close to have to say about the person you are considering? There is a concept in our deen, it's called shura, right? Shura is getting advice from people that you trust. And nobody in this world is liked by everyone, okay? But if everybody around you is telling you, a person gives me a bad vibe, or I don't think this person is right for you, it's time to pause and consider like what might be going on, right? And if a person says, oh, are you sure? He seems really quiet, or oh, I never really imagined you two together, that's not what I'm talking about. The people can have their opinions, don't let that derail you. But if more than one person is telling you that they have concerns, like real concerns about the person you're considering, or they've heard problematic things, then definitely have your time on and look at them. And let people that you're close to, let people who are around you know that you're open to their feedback and you're open to their opinions. Because many people, you'll notice this, when people break up, that's when people say, oh, you know what, I always have this feeling about this person, or I had a feeling it wasn't going to work. But they never spoke up at the time when they could have. And there's different reasons for this. Some people think you're going to be defensive, some people think you're already infatuated, there's no point. Some people think that they don't want to ruin their friendship with you, they don't want to rock the boat. So you have to let people know that your opinion matters to me, I trust your judgment, and I want you to let me know if there's something that maybe I'm missing. I can honestly say I had a lot of doubts at the time about marrying my husband, and one of the reasons I ended up marrying him is because somebody I really trusted and respected, my brother, was the one who convinced me and pointed out all the things he saw in my husband that he thought were a good balance for me. That at that time, I couldn't see. I got married when I was 21. I got engaged at the age of 20, so I was still pretty young, mashallah. But my brother, he was able to see things that I wasn't able to see. So all of us, inshallah, have somebody like that in our lives who will be honest with us and who will tell us who's good for us and who isn't. Okay, the 6th question is, do you respect the person you are considering? Is there mutual respect? The essential meaning of the word respect, from the Latin word respectere, means to look at, okay? So it means that you have to actually look at somebody for who they are and then relate with them and actually like them and accept them. That's what it means to respect someone. So we see them in their uniqueness and we appreciate them. So what Everybody's gonna have differences, and the differences I'm talking about are personality differences, not value differences. And for the most part, you do want to look for similarities. Okay, you want to see like, do we have the same interests? Do we have the same goals? And obviously, do we have the same values? The differences are going to be there, right? You're going to find them. So try to find people with similarities with you. Can it be problematic if a couple is too similar? Yes. And I've seen that happen again too. I've seen problems when it's two introverts who don't go out, don't talk to anybody, are very shy, don't know how to socialize, that they feel stuck. They feel stuck in their relationship and they don't feel that they're moving forward. I've seen it happen when husband and wife are both very emotional, and there's a lot of drama, and they overreact about everything, that there's problems there too. So you want to see somebody who compliments you. By compliment, I don't mean praising you, I mean the yin and yang, right? Balances you. Okay, so this is how you're going to check your respect. You're going to check if you respect the person you're considering. Here are the questions to ask yourself. Can I see the person I'm considering is different from me? And if so, how? Then list the benefits of marrying a person who has these different qualities that are different from yours. Ask yourself, what are the strengths of the person I'm considering, and do I appreciate them? What are his or her weaknesses? Can I respect and accept him or her with those weaknesses? I know of a young lady who struggled because she really, really respects her brother a lot. Her brother's her ideal, and she wanted whoever she marries to be like her brother. And her brother is somebody who literally everything he touches turns to gold. Everything he does it well. And he just succeeds with whatever venture he goes into. And she was considering a guy who didn't necessarily win on his first attempt. You know, he didn't get into the first university he applied to. He didn't get the first job that he interviewed for, whereas with her brother, he did. And she struggled with that a little bit. Like, can I accept this about my partner and not think of him as a loser? But then she saw other qualities in this young man that she admired and respected that weren't necessarily there in her brother. And she was always perfect. And these are certain qualities that she thought were important to have in a husband. And one of them being that she really, really appreciated and respected the way the guy practiced the deen and the character traits he had as a result of the deen. What are his or her goals? Do I respect and appreciate those goals? And then ask yourself, the person that I'm considering inspires me to be, and then fill in the blank. And this young lady told me that the young man she's considering, she said that he inspired her to be more legal and, to be more practicing in her religion. And that was something she was looking for in her life. And so she liked that about him. And so let's see what else I wanted to cover. Okay, there are certain gaps, you guys, that can threaten the respect in a relationship. And I'm just going to put it out there. So sometimes if a woman is much more educated and makes a lot more money than her husband, that can be problematic if she starts to think of herself as better than him. Or if she starts to think of him as not as intelligent or not as ambitious, right? So that's something everybody's going to have to look at themselves and see how do I view this situation. So you want to be careful. Also, if a man is more than 10 years older than his wife, if he's got a lot more experience and a lot more worldliness, it can happen sometimes where he starts to infantilize his wife. Thinks of her as a kid, thinks of her as a baby who doesn't know anything. So that's something to look out for as well, to make sure that there's mutual respect. Right? Everybody's not going to bring the same thing to the table. Just want to make sure there's mutual respect. And the third one, where there can be a gap, is if you're considering a spouse from a very different social class than you, and everybody knows their own social class, you have to really think about it. Because some of the issues that can come up come up later in little ways that you didn't expect. It can even come up in little things like table manners, right? That what one person was taught versus the other. I know of somebody who comes from a very educated, very accomplished family, and she was considering a guy with very poor English grammar. He didn't speak well. And it showed that he didn't read much, he didn't read books, and it was affecting the way she was able to look at him and view him. So that's something everybody has to ask themselves. I'll tell you about one young lady who was considering a guy who, mashallah, had all the qualities that anybody could consider and had it all. But he came from a different social class, and he had been always taught to try to get the best deal and save, as much money as possible on everything that you do. Whereas this young lady came from a very wealthy family and never had to look at the bill. Her dad just kind of paid for everything. And you can't fault her for that. That's just her reality, right? I'll make some people wealthy, some people poor, everyone has their own reality. But she was considering this guy who had a lot of potential, who didn't come from the same social class as her, but really, mashallah, had a lot of potential. He got her an engagement ring, and they found out, she didn't know this, but people found out that it was from Walmart. It was a diamond ring from Walmart. And everyone was trying to do damage control before she could possibly find out. And I actually asked, what's the big deal? So, okay, it's from Walmart, as long as it's nice. And the girl's father said to me, it's not about the ring, and it's not about Walmart itself per se. He said it's about him knowing she's not a Walmart ring type of girl. That's what he needs to know. That there's going to be problems in their marriage if this is what he's offering her when she comes from a certain standard. And I think there was wisdom in that. And that was something they had to work through. And alhamdulillah, he's able to afford giving her the life. It's just that he came from a certain scarcity mindset, which he had to overcome. Okay, 7. Can you be open and honest with the person you're considering? Do you trust him or her? Okay, trust takes time to build. It doesn't happen overnight. And so the way you know if you trust a person is you ask yourself, do I feel safe with the person I'm considering? Can I let my guard down around him or her? You ask yourself, how does he or she treat people? How does he or she talk about others? Would I say that he or she is an honest person? Can I rely on him or her? To what extent? What are my deepest, darkest secrets? Do I feel that he or she would eventually be able to handle these secrets, accept me with them, and support me? Now, I want to give you 3 points about self-disclosure, okay? Self-disclosure doesn't mean that you spill all your dirty laundry. Self-disclosure does not mean that you reveal all your past sins. In Islam, when you commit a sin and nobody knows about it, it's between you and Allah. And you do your tawbah and you make things right with Allah, and you don't go around telling people about the sins that you've committed, right? Tawbah is private, and if Allah has kept a veil over your sins, you don't go around exposing them to people. So, but what it does mean, what self-disclosure does mean, is that you can share incidents and secrets from your past that might affect your behavior and your relationship in the present. Okay, so if you did have a problematic relationship in the past with somebody, I wouldn't go around saying, I used to have a boyfriend or I used to have a girlfriend. But if you had a problematic relationship with someone that's affected you, and your partner needs to know what your sensitivities are and what your traumas are, then yeah, this is something that is going to be important to share. And if you can't trust your partner enough to share, then that's not a good sign, right? This is obviously after a while of getting to know somebody. All right, the second thing about self-disclosure, be careful not to self-disclose prematurely. Opening up too quickly can cause a lot of damage. It can scare people off. It can make people make judgments about you that are not fair. Trust needs to be earned, all right? So you don't want to start laying your entire soul bare to another person when you're still finding out what your favorite colors are, your favorite movies are. And self-disclosure, the third thing you should know about it, is it shouldn't be one-sided. Although one person usually takes the lead, there should be reciprocity. Right? The other person should be reciprocating and sharing things about themselves as well. Vulnerability, you guys, is an essential issue for it. If you fall under any of these categories, we'll give you just a quick solution. So the first is fear of being swallowed up in a close relationship. Okay? The solution to that is that you want to build healthy boundaries without losing a sense of self. And you're going to need guidance for that. Speaking to a therapist or a mentor. The second is that painful relationship experience in a person's past causes you from being able to open up now with another person. And so the solution for that is to read books about relationships, about opening up, to seek role models, to talk to people who are in healthy marriages and get tips from them, get advice from them. You have to work at it. The third reason a person might fear emotional intimacy is insecurity and fear of rejection. And the solution to that is that you just have to build your self-esteem. You have to believe in your ability to change. And you have to believe that this is written. That even if a person rejects you, it's okay. That's what Allah had written. And there's something you're meant to learn from this. Just remember, Allah helps those who help themselves. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And then the fourth reason people fear emotional intimacy is that maybe they come from a background where people didn't open up, didn't share, and maybe they have a personality that doesn't open up. And so the solution to that is to just start practicing. Start writing out your thoughts, develop the skill of how to be a good listener. And most people, when they choose their partners, something they say that they appreciate about their partner is that they were good listeners. Okay, the eighth question. How well do you get along with the person you're considering? How is your communication? And so there's 4 reasons why people who are fighting all the time continue to stay together. The first is that they're infatuated, so they just can't let go of each other. The second is they're dramaholics. There are people who thrive on drama. They need it in their lives in order to feel alive. And they feel alive when there's conflict. The third is they're just too used to each other and they don't know how to start something new. And the fourth is they're just in denial. They know that there's something that's not working between them, but they just aren't willing to accept it. You need to know that no relationship is conflict-free. But what you want to do is when you argue, and everybody's going to argue, you want to argue like scientists, not like lawyers. Okay? A lawyer argues to win the fight, to win the debate. But a scientist argues, a scientist is trying to find out the truth of the situation. They're trying to find out what's going on underneath, what's causing this to happen, right? So that's how when you talk to your partner, you want to seek to understand, not seek to win. Okay, the ninth is, does the person you're considering bring out the best in you? This is, I had a scholar tell us once that you want to marry somebody who's going to drag you to Jannah. Okay, what does that mean? That you're going to be dragged to Jannah? It doesn't sound really nice. It sounds kind of violent and forceful, right? But what it means is that it's not easy. Getting to Jannah isn't easy. There's going to be times you're going to feel lazy and discouraged, and you're going to want to give up, and you're going to be like, we can't do this. And you're going to want a partner who's like, no, we can. We are going to do this. We're going to do this together. And then the 10th is, if the person I'm considering never changes, would I still want to get married? Right? Go into it accepting that the person probably is not going to change. You can hope for it. They say that women go into marriages, men go into marriages hoping their wives are never going to change. And they do, and women go into marriages hoping their husbands are going to change, and they don't, right? That's what usually people think. But both parties should go into marriage just thinking that if the person changes, it's going to be for themselves. But you can do the love. Definitely do the love. Or if there's changes you would like, Do the one for them and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you that change as a gift to you. But go into it assuming it's not going to happen unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it. And the irony is usually when you get stopped trying to change people, that's when changes actually happen. All right, really quick before I wrap up, something very important that I feel I need to share with you guys. A couple of hadiths about marriage, which I'm sure you guys have heard, but I want to give a little caveat to it. So, one hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, a woman is married for 4 things: her wealth, her lineage, her beauty, and her religion. Choose the one who is religious, may be prospered. Right? That was the advice from the Prophet ﷺ. Another hadith, when someone whose religion and character you are pleased with comes to you with a proposal, then marry him. If you do not do so, there will be fitna and great corruption on earth. 2 more hadiths. There is nothing better for 2 who love one another than marriage. And the last one, O young men, whoever among you can afford marriage, let him marry. Now, I had a female scholar who used to give a lot of marriage advice in the community, and a lot of couples were struggling with her. And she told me something that kind of surprised me. She said that if a woman comes to her and says, I have a choice between 2 guys, I don't know why it has to be so binary, but this is the situation. I have a choice between 2 guys, and one guy, he prays 5 times a day, he goes to the mosque, he always has his son in his hand, he knows his fiqh, good practicing Muslim, but he's rude to me, and he's rude to my parents, and he loses his temper easily, and he's stingy, he's not a good tipper, and he's always trying to get away with giving as little as possible to people who have rights over him. But he's very religious. And then I've got this other person who is trying to get on the path with his prayers. He isn't quite there, isn't praying all 5 prayers, but wants to, and is working towards it. Doesn't really know his bit, but he says he's willing to take a class, but doesn't know right now. But he's nice, and he's funny, and he treats me with respect. The female scholar, and I was a lot younger when she told me this, now I totally get the wisdom, but the female scholar said that she always advises marry the one who's not religious, but who has good character. She said, because you can't fix me. You can't fix me. And it's true. So, and I noticed in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, when someone whose religion and character you are pleased with comes to you. So that's the thing. Many of us will have a checklist about religiosity, and this even goes for men with women. They'll be like, oh, I want a woman who wears hijab, and I want a woman who knows her fiqh and prays 5 times a day. Yes, that is very, very important, no doubt. But in this day and age, you'll see women in hijab dancing in public. I just saw it happen last week, You'll see women in hijab who flirt, who put all their private business out there and pout for the cameras for other men to look at. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean she's honest. And so you want somebody who has Islamic character. You can't go wrong with that. And yes, you do want somebody who knows and practices their deen, because if they know and practice their deen, they will fulfill your rights. Because this is such a merciful religion, and mashallah, it does look out for the rights of both parties. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understands what makes men men and what makes women women, and what our individual needs are. So you can't lose with somebody who has a healthy understanding of the deen. But if they're only ticking the boxes and like, oh yeah, I'm a hafiz, oh, this is the other thing. Important piece of advice. Do try to talk to somebody who's either traveled with the person you're considering, lived with the person you're considering, or done business with the person you're considering. You learn a lot about a person when you travel with them, do business with them, and live with them. So ask roommates, ask people that they try to, do a startup with, and definitely find out how they treat their mothers. Find out how men treat their wife. I know a hafiz who leads Tarawih prayers, who's very, very mean to his mother. And it says a lot about his character. And so that's something to consider, right? How they treat their parents and how they do business, how they are in moments of stress. And this was my first time giving this talk, you guys. I'm so sorry I went over time. There were a few more things I wanted to cover. Inshallah, we'll have another opportunity. I have a website. If anybody wants to reach out and have questions, I'd like to help anyone with any. If I can't help you, I'll try to get you the help you need. My website is hinakm.com, Hinakm. It's just my name, Hina, and then the initials of my two last names, KM. And I am going to be praying for all of you. I hope you guys will take a moment and mention me to Allah at some point and just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect and bless and guide my family. I have 2 more sons that still need to get married, so please pray for them to find wonderful life partners, and I will be praying the same for all of you. So.
Thank you for that talk. Kind of a burning question nowadays. Should men open the door for their spouses?
Should men open the door for their spouses?
So let me rephrase the question. You're saying that men should be gentlemen, right? Always.
I want to opinion on this.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting you asked that because one of the reasons my son made that video with us about the whole toxic feminism is in college he once opened the door for a young lady and she snapped at him and said, I can open doors for myself, I need you. And that's when he realized, I don't want that kind of energy around me. I think men should be chivalrous, yeah. I've always believed this. And if you're there and you see a door needs to be open, you should do that for anyone. Women can open for men, men can open for women. It's not a gender thing necessarily. It's just about looking out for each other and having good manners in general.
I agree. Thank you very much.
You're very.
Anybody else? Okay. Can you hand over the mic to the? How come there are no questions from the women's side? You guys, everything is crystal clear. Is that what it means?
Please give me an easy question like that one.
So my question is, how do you determine the religion? You mentioned about your spouse doing that, but how can you determine the religiosity of a potential partner, in particular, without coming off as judgmental?
Yeah.
And still being, not coming off as like too intrusive or too prying,
Yeah.
And doing it in a respectful way without them getting upset.
Yeah. So what you want to look for is growth mindset. And you want to look for that a person desires living their life according to the deen and wants to grow in the deen and is sincere. And uses the deen as basically has taqwa, right? In every situation asking like, what is the divine command about this? What does Allah want from me in this moment? That is something you'll see by how a person lives their day-to-day life. Like, oh, I need to pray, prayer time's going out. Or, oh, I'm not sure that that's okay to eat, I want to make sure that it's halal. These are just the superficial things. But also things like not doing ghibah, which was something that really struck me about my daughter in law. She didn't talk about people. The second anybody started talking about anybody, she would get up and leave. And you could tell that she's uncomfortable with that. Those were religious qualities and religious characteristics that stood out and were really beautiful. And they're not things that can be taught. They're in people and inherently. So that's why it is important to spend time hanging out with each other and getting to know each other and talking to people who know the person you're considering. Because those are the things they're going to comment on. My husband was not very religious when I met him. And I asked him what role Islam played in his life, and he actually said at the time, not a big one. But he said, I'm looking for those influences in my life, and that's why I'm talking to you. I'm talking to a Muslim woman. And so the potential was there, the sincerity was there, and he was willing to take classes, and he was willing to learn. So people aren't necessarily going to be there already in the goals that you have, but if it's really important to you, if that is one of your core values, that there should be this bare minimum that they need to be at, then yeah, definitely look for that. And don't consider yourself being judgmental. Everybody's judging. We all have to judge in order to decide who we're going to spend the rest of our lives with. What you don't want to do is feel contempt towards anyone just because they're in a different place. That would be my advice.